Hari Om. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaskara to all. Sadashiva Samharambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru-Parampara. Good evening, everyone. This is your host, Soumya. I welcome everyone to yet another session of Indica Moksha for this Global Festival of Oneness, that is a month-long festival on Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavadpada, covering various aspects and topics on Advaita Vedanta. Today's talk is Seeing One Everywhere by Swami Tyagananda ji. We are very blessed by your presence and my humble pranams to you, Swamiji. A brief introduction on Swamiji. Swami Tyagananda ji joined the Ramakrishna order at the monastery in Mumbai in 1976 after graduating from the University of Mumbai in India. He received spiritual instruction, that is the Mantra Diksha, from Holy Mother's disciple Swami Vireshwarananda ji and his sannyasa vows from Swami Gambhirananda ji. He served in Mumbai from 1976 to 80s and also in other monasteries such as Belur Math, New Delhi, Chennai, and was sent to Boston in 1998 to assist Swami Sarvagatananda ji. He is the Hindu chapel at Harvard and MIT since 1999, and after Sarvagatananda ji's retirement in 2002, he was appointed head of the Vedanta Society in Boston. Tyagananda ji was editor of the English journal Vedanta Kesari for 11 years and has written, translated, and edited 14 books. He writes a fortnightly blog and his talks are available as audio podcasts. He has also presented papers at academic conferences and given lectures and classes at the Vedanta Society, as well as in MIT, Harvard, and on invitation to other colleges and religious groups in North America. With this brief introduction, I request Swamiji to start the session. Kindly begin, Swamiji.
Thank you, Soumya, for that introduction. I'll begin with a short prayer. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Maheti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. Our topic this evening in India and this morning in the West is seeing one everywhere. In the course of this month-long program, I'm sure many of you have heard other learned talks and presentations. And a lot of them deal with this issue of unity and diversity, that our present experience is that we are seeing many everywhere. There are millions and trillions of human beings, animals, objects. The moment we open our eyes in the morning, we see many. When we sleep in our dream, we see many. Only in that deep sleep state, we don't see many. We see really one, and that one is really kind of nothingness. And the awareness that we don't know anything, which we realize next morning when we wake up and say, oh, I slept well and I didn't know anything at all. So at least as far as our personal experience goes, we see that our waking experience is often filled with stress, anxiety, worry, fear, a lot of things that kind of vitiate the joy that we experience in life with some of these negative elements. Dreams can sometimes be very pleasant, but sometimes can be nightmares. Only our experience in deep sleep, when there is no many there, we find it just fully restful and fully joy. So at least from our present experience, even though we haven't become enlightened yet, we know that the perception of the many brings us all the problems that we are faced with today. And the perception of one seems to at least make those problems go away, however temporarily, in our state of deep sleep. Now, why do we see the many? What is the actual truth behind it? Many of these topics were discussed in the earlier talks that have been going on since one full month. So today I don't propose to go into the philosophy of why from the one we begin to see the many. That the scriptures, the Upanishads point out again and again that ultimate reality is one and undivided. I mean, that's what Advaita means, not two. So as far as the scriptures go, we are told that all these many, the diversity, the multiplicity that we see around us is not really there. So we are not seeing things as they are. And yet we are seeing them. So we cannot deny our present perception, and yet we cannot reconcile it with what is presented to us as the ultimate truth. So the question that I would like to think about a little bit, reflect on a little bit today is, what do we do with this multiplicity? What do we do with these many? If the one is the ultimate reality, if that is the truth, how can I make these many things disappear? If they are true, if these many are real and true, they'll never disappear. But of course, we know they do disappear. In dream, the waking world disappears. In deep sleep, the dreams also disappear. So we know that they disappear. But how can I make them disappear even in the waking state, even when I'm conscious? Because the state of sleep is I'm not really conscious there. And therefore, we can say, well, because of the sleep, they seem to have disappeared. Is it possible to make the multiplicity disappear in full consciousness? And for this, I would like to share with you some profound insights that Swami Vivekananda presented. And there's this one statement that he made, and that is, which I love very much. He says, look at the ocean and not the wave. So when we go to a sea beach or on the ocean beach, of course, we see the ocean, but we also see the waves. How is it possible to not see the waves and see only the ocean? And this is what Vivekananda said. He said, although we appear as little waves, the whole ocean is at our back, and we are one with it. No wave can exist of itself. This whole universe is my body. All health, all happiness is mine, because all is in the universe. Say, I am the universe. Now, there is one important principle that can help us understand how to recognize the relationship between the wave and the ocean. And that simple principle is, to see is to be. There are two ways generally the world is experienced. One is in the objective sense. By objective sense, I mean that I see the world because it is out there. So because the world is there, I'm seeing it. That's one way. The subjective way is to ask, who is the one who is saying it? Is the world there because I'm seeing it? Or I'm seeing it because the world is out there? And what the principle in non-dualist Vedanta, in Advaita, is that I see outside what I'm inside. If I am clinging to my own form, if my own form is very real to me, I will just see forms outside. So what I am, my self-identity is directly related to my perception of the world. So Vivekananda, this is what he said. Change the subject and the object is bound to change. Purify yourself and the world is bound to be purified. This one thing requires to be taught now more than ever before. The world will change if we change. If we are pure, the world will become pure. The question is why I should see evil in others. And this is important. I cannot see evil unless I be evil. And this is what I was referring to before, that I see outside what I'm inside. If there is, even if the seeds of selfishness in my heart, I'm going to look outside and see selfishness everywhere. If there is this, my heart has become completely pure, I will see purity everywhere. In the life of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the guru of Swami Vivekananda, we see this very clearly. He was so immersed in the presence of the divine everywhere. And in his case, it was the divine as Mother Kali, the divine mother. So he was so filled with that presence that he saw everywhere outside just the play of the divine mother. So divine mother was inside his heart, so that is what he saw outside. And so all our ideas about reforming the world need to be tempered a little bit, asking whether I should make changes outside or I should make some fundamental change inside me. Yes, we have reformers in every generation. They do a lot of good to the world. But all external reform we see, wonderful as it is always temporary. That some good is done and then it kind of goes down again. And then we need more reformers to come in the next generation to come and continue the work. But if I change inside, then for me personally, the world will change forever. The problem in seeing many outside is that there are these barriers in my own heart, the barriers that are created in my personality itself. When I look at myself, clearly, there is a physical part of me, there is my mind, and then there is this awareness within me. Now, all of these limitations of form and identity, all the limitations that come with me seeing myself as a human being, all these limitations create a barrier. And if I can break through these barriers, if I can somehow start thinking of myself as not just this mortal, limited human being, that I'm not limited by this body, not limited by the mind, then I might begin to see that there is some greater reality here, that I'm not just a finite being, I'm in fact the infinite being. And so hence we come back to that great teaching of Vivekananda, look at the ocean, not the waves. Now, how do you make the waves disappear from the ocean? And there are 4 principles involved, or the 4 things we need to recognize in order to make the waves disappear. The first is to recognize, of course, that the wave is not different from the ocean. The ocean is really this vast expanse of water, and a wave, just this same water taken a particular form. So the wave is not essentially different from the ocean. That's the first recognition. The second recognition is that, but the wave is also different from the ocean, because clearly we can distinguish a wave from the ocean. We don't mistake one for the other. A wave is that body of water which has a specific name, which has a specific shape. It moves in a certain way, and that can be distinguished from the rest of the ocean. And a third recognition is that the form of the wave, the form which distinguishes it from the ocean, is temporary. No wave lasts forever. We see that these waves come slowly to the shore and then they dissipate. So that's the third recognition, that the wave's form is temporary. And the fourth recognition is that once the wave subsides, once the form goes away, you can no longer distinguish the wave from the ocean, because you recognize then that both are just water. That the same water of the ocean, when it moves in a certain form, in a certain way, we call it the wave. And the rest of the water we just say is the ocean. So these are the four recognitions. First, the wave is not different from the ocean. Second, well, it has its identity. Third, the form which gives the wave its identity is temporary. And fourth, once that form subsides, you can no longer distinguish it from the rest of the ocean. Now, it's possible to think of the absolute, the Parabrahman, the supreme reality, or in theistic language, God, as this infinite ocean. And every one of us, all living, non-living entities, we all have a form, we all have a name. So all of us, every entity in this world is a wave in this ocean of the Supreme Being. And if we apply these four recognitions, that recognize that essentially we are not different from the ocean, that in fact we feel we are different because of this identity that we have created, because of this wave, because of this form and name that I have and every one of us has. But these are temporary. We know, of course, death. What is death? But this physical form that I have will go away, will destroy it. The body goes away. So there are ways by which this form can perish. And when even the mind, which is of course much more subtle, even when that mind perishes, then this wave, which I think is someone different and a separate being, cannot be distinguished from the ocean of this infinite reality. Now, to grasp this idea of the wave and the ocean, Swami Vivekananda begins by telling us not of just one ocean, but he breaks it down and he says there are three oceans really. And the first ocean is, and these three oceans are related to the three broad divisions of our personality. We know that, well, there is this body, the physical part of our personality. Then we know we are not simply the body. Inside the body, there is a subtle part of me. And together we can just call it the mind, and which includes the mind, the intellect, the memories, thoughts, emotions, feelings, samskaras, everything. So that's the subtle part of my being. And then, of course, there is this awareness, consciousness within me. So corresponding to these three parts of my personality at present, we can think about three oceans. And Vivekananda called it the ocean of matter, the ocean of ideas, and the ocean of consciousness. Now, those with a little bit of a scientific background will realize that there are really no physical barriers between us. We might seem as if we are separate beings, separated by space, but really there is matter, there is air in the middle. So it's possible to look upon this entire material universe as an ocean of matter. Atoms and molecules in different forms, in different combinations, are taking form. We know that one electron is not different from another electron. What makes a molecule different from another molecule is just its composition. How many kinds of protons and electrons are there in it? And so at that atomic and subatomic level, there is really no distinction. And so it's possible to look upon this entire material universe as an ocean of material particles. And our own body, our own physical body, is a wave in that ocean of matter. And just as the water inside the ocean keeps on moving, keeps on changing, it's always in a flux. Similarly, the body too is in a state of flux. Vivekananda said, no man was ever born who could stop his body one moment from changing. Body is the name of a series of changes. We might think we have the same body, but of course we know when we were born, we weighed so little, and now we weigh much more. We keep on changing. We may not notice the change day by day, but if you look over the years, of course, we have all changed physically. So that's why Vivekananda said, no man was ever born who could stop his body one moment from changing. Body is the name of a series of changes. As in a river, the masses of water are changing before you every moment, and new masses are coming, yet taking similar form, so is it with this body. Now, modern research has pointed out kind of even more graphically how it happens. So let me read to you a portion of how this body can be viewed as a body of water in which the water itself is continually being exchanged. The river is constantly being changed by new water rushing in. The same holds true for the body. If you could see your body as it really is, you would never see it the same way twice. 98% of the atoms in your body were not there a year ago. The skeleton that seems so solid was not there 3 months ago. The configuration of the bone cells remains somewhat constant, but atoms of all kinds pass freely back and forth between these cell walls. And by that means you acquire a new skeleton every 3 months. The skin is new every month. We don't even know these things are changing within us on a daily basis. You have a new stomach lining every 4 days, with the actual surfaces cells that contact food being renewed every 5 minutes. The cells in the liver turn over very slowly, but new atoms still flow through them, like water in a river course, making a new liver every 6 weeks. Even within the brain, whose cells are not replaced once they die, the content of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and so on is totally different today from a year ago. Now, you might say, well, all these things are changing, but I don't see it happening. Every time I look in the mirror, things don't change every day. And the reason is, as this researcher points out, if you lived in a building whose bricks were systematically taken out and replaced every year, if you keep the same blueprint, then it will look like the same building, but it won't be the same in actuality. The human body also stands there looking much the same from day to day, but through the process of respiration, digestion, elimination, and so forth, it is constantly and ever in exchange with the rest of the world. And we know that. For instance, one very clear example would be if I eat an apple. So an apple is an object in the external world, and I start eating it. Now, once I eat it, and once I digest it, so whatever portion the body doesn't need, it'll eliminate. But the digested part of the apple nourishes me. It becomes a part of my body. So what was an external object has now become a part of me. So that is how, even in a very visible way, a material object that was outside has now become me, and I'm eliminating things from my body in many different ways, and they become a part of the universe. In this way, material is continually being exchanged between the body and the rest of the universe. And just as the wave may not always have the same water as the wave travels, because the way water is also being continually exchanged. In the same way, day after day, month after month, year after year, our body is also changing. Now, we might ask, what is the benefit of looking upon our body as simply a wave in this ocean of matter? Now, there are several benefits. One is a new insight into the meaning of death itself, because a lot of times, in a very superficial sort of way, people think that, oh, I'm going to die. But if you just think deeply, what is death really? It is this body becoming non-functional. The body, we know the chemical composition of the body. We know that the body is material. We know that it's made up of atoms and molecules, that whether the body is cremated or buried, it is ultimately going back to being dust or just a heap of ashes. But where will that dust and ashes go? There's a law of conservation of matter. It just doesn't disappear into nothingness. That dust and those ashes go back and become a part of this universe. So even physically, we don't really die. The same matter that is now a part of my body will continue to be in this world, in this universe, in some other form. So it's a very whole different new way of understanding death. That death is not the end. Death is more like a continuation in a different form. This is what Vivekananda said. There can be no physical death for us and no material death when we see that all is one. All bodies are mine. So even body is eternal, because the tree, the animal, the sun, the moon, the universe itself is my body. How can it then die? If a hair falls out, we do not think we die. So if our body dies, it is like the hair falling. And we get some deeper insight into it. Swami Vivekananda said on another occasion, he said, he alone lives whose life is in the whole universe. That is the ocean. And the more we concentrate our lives on limited things, waves, the faster we go towards death. The fear of death can be conquered when we realize I'm in everything and in everybody. I'm in all the lives. I'm the universe. And then alone, the state of fearlessness is reached. Now, one other second benefit of that is that all the negativities, the jealousy, the envy, the hatred, all these things that are present in some measure in the hearts of most of us, we will find can be removed this way. Do we ever see the ocean being jealous of its waves? The ocean knows, well, they are just me. They're just my own water. They think they are separate, but they're just me. So the more I'm able to make these waves disappear, my physical form, minimize the impact it has on my self-understanding, the more the negativities of my heart will begin to go away. And the other benefit is, of course, the question of food. I already referred to how what we eat becomes a part of my body. It'll make us more conscious of the kind of food that we eat. The more junk food that we eat, a food that is not nutritious, then it's going to affect my body. And so awareness of health can be one great benefit, even physical health, of seeing that my body is a part of this big ocean of matter. And then we know that my body can get pure food, pure water, only if that pure food and pure water is available outside. And that makes us more aware of the environmental and ecological issues. So even the great quest that we see today, and very much needed, that climate change, and then we need to do something about it. And it's possible for someone in whom this Advaita has not been digested well, might say, oh, everything is unreal anyway, so why bother about it? No, we need to, because we are being affected by the change outside. So it may not be ultimately real, but that is no reason why I should ignore it, because ignoring the world or not taking care of the world is same as not taking care of my own body, because my body is only a wave in this external ocean of matter. So we have seen that looking upon the body as a wave in the ocean of matter minimizes our fear of death. It helps in the cultivation of virtues like same-sightedness. It removes the rise of negative qualities such as jealousy, hatred, envy, and it helps us develop healthy food habits and live in a more environment-friendly manner. Now, that's one ocean. I said Vivekananda mentioned 3 oceans. The second ocean he mentions is the ocean of ideas. We know that we are not just the physical body. So what's the invisible part within me? The mind. Now, there's a lot that can be said about the mind. But if there is one thing that the mind is identified with mostly, is that it's a storehouse of ideas, of thoughts, memories, feelings, emotions, all these things. Now, just as my body, physical body, is a wave in this physical material world, it's possible to look upon my mind as a wave in this ocean of the cosmic mind, the ocean of ideas. And it completely changes the way we think then. What it does is that just as a wave is continuously in touch with the rest of the ocean, my mind is continuously in touch with other minds. Now, our Vedic rishis discovered that through the process that sometimes people now say telepathy, is essentially thought transference. They found that it's possible to know what is going on in someone else's mind, or to transfer my thought to you without the use of words. Of course, one way to do it is through words. That is, I think a thought, I then convert that thought into corresponding words and ideas, and then I utter those words, then that sound is caught by your ears, and then that sound is resolved back into ideas and then words. Now, that's a very roundabout process. Now, what these Vedic sages found out is that it's possible that my thought can simply be sent to your thought. It's a difference between, for instance, in a kind of crude sort of way, the difference between an email and a text message. An email, you have to send it and the other person has to open it and read it. It takes time. But a text message will go instantly. And of course, if you directly do a video chat, it is even faster. So thought transference, one mind communicating with the other mind without taking the help of words and any of these other even technological things, that is possible. And that is what gave this profound insight to the Vedic sages, that the minds are also in continual contact with one another. That in fact, there is this ocean of the mind, or the ocean of ideas, and my own little mind is only a small wave in that ocean of ideas. And what we find, therefore, is that if the physical ocean of matter is the universal body, or sometimes we could think about it as the Virat Purusha, then this cosmic mind, then this ocean of the ideas is really this cosmic mind. Now, thinking about this also has many benefits. Looking upon my mind as being connected with every other mind. And first benefit is clearly is we will no longer cling to my own little mind when we know that it is just a part of this huge cosmic minds. And the more my forgetting of this little I, minimizing the role of this little ego in my mind, the purer and the happier I be. That's the first great benefit. The too much self-centeredness, making everything, it's all about me, that doesn't help. So we can be happier, we can be purer if this little ego gets out of the way. The second benefit is a strong detachment from our own personal obsessions, our notions, our worries, anxieties, joys, and sorrows. Because we know that the mind is just this water being exchanged. Because none of these things are any more my own as that they belong to others. If I can look at the ocean of the ideas, and then I can be happy, detached, and free from most mental illnesses. The third benefit is we can open our minds to others, recognizing that there are healthy, positive, strong ideas out there which can benefit me. Clearly, there has to be some filter so that I don't allow the negative, weak, harmful thoughts to enter my mind. So a real communication and education becomes possible when we begin to see that my mind is a little wave in the ocean of ideas. The other benefit is that the world of ideas is a purer world than the world of gross matter. And the more we are able to dwell in this world of ideas and thoughts, the purer we become. Our personality becomes more refined. And finally, the idea of ownership will go away. I mean, nowadays we live in a world, everything, there is world of copyright. This is my idea and I should be paid for it and no one can use that idea without my permission and so on. But once we recognize that nothing is really mine, because ideas are continually going in my mind and going out of my mind. And therefore, just think about it this way. The Upanishads that we have, the Gita and so on, there was no copyright there. Shankaracharya, when he wrote all these bhashyas, he didn't copyright them. That idea of intellectual property is a more recent idea. And it might have its monetary value, but from a spiritual standpoint, that idea of ownership can be very harmful. Because the more I feel I own something, in reality, that thing is owning me. And that becomes a great hurdle in my self-transcendence. Now, it's possible to look upon these two oceans, the ocean of matter and the ocean of ideas, and we can just call it together as just the ocean of life. Because both the body and the mind are a manifestation of this vital force called prana. The prana comes often and often in Upanishads and in the Gita as well, in many of the Vedanta texts, and there's a lot that can be said about the role of prana. But it's helpful to see that the ocean of matter and the ocean of ideas can be combined into this one ocean of life. Vivekananda's words again, he said, everything that we see around us, feel, touch, taste is simply a differentiated manifestation of matter. It is all pervading, fine, all that we call solid, liquid, or gases, figures, forms of bodies, the earth, sun, moon, everything is composed of this matter. And then he begins to show, goes on to show how even all the forces are a part of this as well. And finally, we come to that third ocean that Vivekananda referred to, the ocean of consciousness. Now, this consciousness is the only non-material part of my personality. That both the body and the mind are material. Now, that the body is material is pretty obvious. It's not so obvious that the mind is material as well. But it's this great insight that the sages had, something that modern medicine is recognizing clearly only in recent decades, of the psychosomatic nature of all illnesses. It's said that more than 70% of the illnesses that we have are psychosomatic, in the sense that they have a physical component and they have a psychological component. we know that the body and the mind act and react upon each other. When the body is not well, and if it remains in that state for a long time, it does affect the mind. When the mind is not well, and if it remains in that chronic state for a long time, the body is affected. The reason the body and mind are able to act and react upon each other is because both are material. And so, if the body is made of gross matter, sthula, then the mind is made up of subtle matter, sukshma. So the only difference is one is sthula, the other is sukshma, but both are material. But we are not just these material entities. So there is this one non-material aspect within me, and that is pure consciousness. So at present, my self-understanding is I am these material parts and the non-material part. And what the Vedas tell us is that my true identity is this, I am just pure consciousness. The body and the mind are only coverings. And that's there in the Gita, in the well-known verse, we see Vasamsi Jirnani Yatha Vihaya and so on. So these ideas show us that it's possible to not be in denial of the body and mind, but to recognize them as coverings. They have a useful purpose, but just because they are useful doesn't mean that they are me. So what we must do, how we can put into practice this insight that of the waves and the ocean. We have seen a kind of an intellectual, logical way of making the waves disappear. It's also possible that these ideas can become an object of our contemplation. Sri Ramakrishna's guru was, the Vedanta guru was a great monk called Totapuri. And he gave the following meditation to Ramakrishna to teach him about the nature of the Supreme Parabrahman or the Absolute. He said, the Absolute is like an infinite ocean, water everywhere, to the right, left, above, and below. Water enveloped in water. It is the water of the great cause, motionless. Waves spring up when it becomes active. Its activities are creation, preservation, and destruction. Again, this is a beautiful, amazing idea for one's contemplation. The more we reflect on ideas such as these, the idea of this infinite ocean, the relationship between the form and the formless, between the finite and the infinite, becomes clearer. Vivekananda gave the following meditation on the same subject. He said, above, it is full of me. Below, it is full of me. In the middle, it is full of me. I am in all beings, and all beings are in me. Om Tat Sat, I am it. I am existence above mind. I am the one spirit of the universe. I am neither pleasure nor pain. The body drinks, eats, and so on. I am not the body. I am not the mind. I am existence, knowledge, bliss. I am the essence and nectar of knowledge. Through eternity, I change not. I am calm, resplendent, and unchanging. There is a beautiful passage in the Vedas. In Sanskrit, it goes like this: Ardram jwalati jyotirhamasmi, jyotir jwalati brahmahamasmi. And the translation of that passage goes like this: the supreme light of consciousness, which shines at the substratum of the liquid element, I am that supreme light. I am the supreme light of Brahman, which shines as the inmost essence of all that exists. I am the infinite ocean, the ocean of consciousness. Even when I'm experiencing myself as a limited self, that's the wave, due to ignorance, now I know that I'm really Brahman, and that is my true nature. I offer my false, limited self into the fire of Brahman, my true infinite self. May this oblation be well made. This ocean of consciousness, indeed, is below, the self is above, the self is behind, the self is in front, the self is to the south, the self is to the north, the self indeed is all this. So It's possible if we can somehow make this a part of our spiritual practice, that no matter what kind of prayer or meditation we might have, it's helpful as an accessory or as an additional part to strengthening, to stabilizing our practice, is to try to expand our awareness, to tell ourselves, I'm not just this body. I'm not just this mind. In reality, I'm more than this body. I'm more than my mind. The limitations of the body are the limitations of the body. They don't have to become my limitations. The body can be limited in many ways. It is limited in many ways, but I can rise above that. The mind is limited in its own way. I can rise above that because they don't limit me. I can change them. I can go beyond them. And using these meditations can help us strengthen, deepen that idea. We'll see that if this idea is kept at the back of the mind, of looking at the ocean, not at the waves, even an intellectual grasp of it in the beginning, we'll begin already to see how much it changes us. And the more it kind of seeps into our being, that it informs the way we think, informs the way we talk, informs the way we understand ourselves and the world around us, inform the way we relate to people around us, we will see a real transformation. Because spiritual life is not simply about believing in something. It's not simply about reading scriptures. It's not just about discussing these things with other people. Spiritual life is actually a real transformation. I must feel I'm a new person, a different person. That today I'm a better person than what I was 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. And it's not a temporary change. It should be a permanent change. That I'm a new person, never to go back to my old weaknesses, to my old wrong, hurtful ways of doing and thinking. If we can do that, that is what seeing one everywhere means. That yes, presently in a superficial sort of way, we are seeing many. But if we use these different insights that come from the scriptures, we will see that in fact, these many are just shadows. These forms just melt away. These names just melt away. And beyond the name and beyond the form stand this one infinite reality. Theistically, bhaktas may think of that one reality as the presence of the divine, a presence of God, a presence of Bhagavan. And in philosophical terms, we might see that same reality. We just call it Brahman. Or we don't even have to call it by any name. We don't even say it's one. Even to think of it as one is a limitation. Therefore, we say not two. And that's what non-duality means. That's what Advaita is. So this was what I thought I would share with you. We have a few minutes. If you have any comments or questions, I shall be happy to hear them. Namaskar.
Thank you for that wonderful lecture, Swamiji. We'll wait for the questions from the audiences for a couple of minutes. Yeah, so I was just have a comment saying that very grateful to you, Swamiji. Thank you for the wonderful lecture.
Thank you. So it's been a great joy being with all of you. And I hope and pray that through the infinite grace of the divine, there is this one verse in the Avadhuta Gita which says, Ishvara anugraha deva pumsam advaita vasana. Even the desire for Advaita, desire for non-duality comes with the grace of Ishvara. So may that grace of Ishvara be upon all of us. that we may all find that one, begin to see that one everywhere, and make our lives truly blessed. And to the extent we are able to make our lives blessed, we'll be able to make the lives of people around us blessed as well.
Yeah.
Oh, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
I think we just received a couple of questions, Swamiji. One
Okay.
is, you said the ocean of ideas is purer than the ocean of matter. Can you please elaborate?
Well, I don't know how to elaborate it, but essentially what we see is that the tendency that drags us down more to the material level is the physicality of things. So the more we are able to dwell, and it's not easy for everyone to do so, we need to acquire the capacity to dwell on abstract ideas. I mean, a lot of time people say, oh, make things practical. And I understand that. But usually what people mean is practical is something that we can do. And understandable. But there is a refinement that is possible when we are able to dwell on this level of ideas. We're able to not be afraid of abstractions. And the more we are able to live with these abstractions and make sense of them, that world is somehow purer, because if we are able to see it reflected in the effect it has on our minds.
Thank you. Another question is, Brahman is not the body or the mind, but does Brahman carry memory of one life?
No, the memories are stored inside the mind. And Brahman is just, essentially, Brahman is just pure consciousness. So memories and everything belong to the mind. So memories are a part of the material world.
So what is the state of mind during dhyanam?
Well, it depends on the quality of dhyanam. But oftentimes in the beginning, we find that the more we try to control the mind, the more the mind, like a restless child, wants to think about what happened yesterday, what happened the previous year, and so on. And so the state of mind in the beginning can be pretty chaotic. But the more our meditation improves, the more there is focus, the more there is Shraddha and Bhakti, then we begin to see that the mind becomes more tranquil, more calm. And when that mind becomes completely pure, then, as Ramakrishna taught, there is essentially no difference between a pure mind and a pure Atman, a pure intellect, a pure buddhi. They're one and the same. To the extent that they are less pure, we are able to make these distinctions. But a completely transparent mind is what in which the spirit, the Atman, reflects completely and fully.
Yeah, thank you. They're also asking for some specific lectures of Swami Vivekananda ji that you can cite, as well as books, if you have any.
The one book I would strongly recommend is Vivekananda Lectures on Jnana Yoga. They are very helpful, and they actually, many of the ideas that I shared with you today are from Vivekananda book Jnana Yoga. And if you want a commentary on that book, there is a book that I wrote a few years ago. It's called Knowing the Knower. It's the manual on Jnana Yoga, because sometimes after reading Jnana Yoga, we might have a question about how can I put it into practice. So that book makes an attempt of seeing how to evolve a more concrete practice from reading these very inspiring lectures on Jnana Yoga. So I do recommend Swami Vivekananda Jnana Yoga to be read. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So I think with that, we come to the end of questions. And thank you so much for your session, Swamiji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Audiences, see you again tomorrow morning in another session. This is a talk called Celebrating Shankaracharya, a down-to-earth teacher, by Giridhar Sharma ji. And see you all tomorrow morning at 7 then. Thank you.